To your perfect future, I whispered, sliding the champagne flute across the table to my sister, Ashley. She didn't notice the fine white powder dissolving in the bubbles, the powder my mother had just slipped into the glass meant for me. Ashley beamed, tilted her head back, and drank every drop. I didn't scream. I didn't stop her. I just smiled at my father as he watched his favorite daughter swallow the poison he intended for me. Before I tell you what happened the moment Ashley hit the floor, tell me in the comments. Have you ever realized the people supposed to protect you were actually your biggest threat? Drop a yes if you know that feeling. The sound of crystal shattering against marble cut through the dinner party like a gunshot. Ashley grasped her throat, her eyes bulging. The perfect future I'd toasted to turning into a seizure on the floor. The room erupted, screams, guests scrambling backward, knocking over chairs. But I stood perfectly still, smoothing the silk of my dress. I didn't rush to hold her hair. I didn't call for help. I just watched. My mother, Susan, froze. Her face wasn't twisted in grief for her favorite daughter. It was twisted in terror because the wrong daughter was dying. She looked at me. And for a split second, the mask slipped. She wasn't a grieving mother. She was a conspirator whose plan had just detonated in her face. They always forgot who I was. To them, I was Eudora, the sullen disappointment, the one who refused to smile for their magazine covers. But out in the real world, I am a forensic auditor. I don't deal in feelings. I deal in facts. I track down hidden assets for federal agencies and audit cartels who bury their money in offshore shells. My parents thought they could erase me like a bad line item on a ledger. But they forgot one crucial thing. You can't outrun an auditor who has already seen the books. And I had seen them. 3 weeks ago, I found the $25 million hole in the family charity. Robert, my father, hadn't just been skimming off the top. He was hollowing it out to pay for his mistresses and bad real estate gambles. He needed my grandmother's trust fund, my inheritance, to plug the gap before the IRS came knocking. But as I watched Ashley convulse, I realized the money was just the excuse. The real reason they tried to kill me ran deeper. Into the ugly, marrow-deep psychology of a family built on lies. It's what I call the truth-teller's curse. They didn't hate me because I was bad. They hated me because I was the living mirror of their failures. Every time they looked at me, they saw Grandma Eleanor, the only person Robert ever feared. The only woman Susan couldn't manipulate. I have her eyes. I have her spine. And in a house built on narcissism, integrity is a capital offense. They had to kill me not to get rich, but to survive their own reflection. Robert rushed to Ashley's side, but he didn't check her pulse. He checked his watch. He looked at the door. He wasn't calculating her survival odds. He was calculating his liability. "Call 911!" a guest screamed, a woman in pearls clutching her husband. "No!" Robert roared, his voice cracking with a desperation that silenced the room. He stood up, his face slick with sweat. "No police. This is a private family matter." I took a sip of my water, the ice clinking softly against the glass. "Private?" I asked, my voice cutting through the panic. "She's stopped breathing, Dad. I think it's a little late for privacy." He glared at me, a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. He knew I knew, and he knew that the moment the paramedics arrived, his timeline for a cover-up would vanish. I watched the realization hit him. He couldn't just bury me anymore. He was going to have to do something much, much worse. Ashley didn't die. Not yet. But she was putting on a terrifying show of trying to. Her heels drummed a frantic, involuntary rhythm against the parquet floor, her breath coming in ragged, wet gasps. The room was a kaleidoscope of panic guests shouting, waiters dropping trays, the heavy, expensive scent of fear rising above the catered salmon. And in the center of it, my father went to work. He didn't dial 911. He pulled his phone from his tuxedo pocket and hit a speed dial number. "Vance!" he barked. "Get in here. Now. Bring the kit." Vance. Dr. Frederick Vance. The concierge doctor who wrote prescriptions for whatever pills my mother needed to get through charity galas and erase the evidence of my father's business trips. He wasn't a healer. He was a fixer with a medical license. "Robert!" a guest shouted, a senator's wife whose face was pale beneath her makeup. "She's seizing. We need an ambulance." "No." Robert spun around, throwing his hands up in a gesture that looked like despair but felt like command. "Please. We have a private medical team on site. An ambulance will only delay treatment. Give her space." It was a lie, but it was a confident one. The crowd hesitated. That was all he needed. He turned on me, pointing a finger that shook with performative rage. "You!" he screamed. "You did this!" The room went dead silent. The only sound was Ashley's choking gasps. "Me?" I asked, my voice calm, cutting through the hysteria. Don't play innocent. Robert reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of cream-colored stationery. He waved it at the guests like a prosecutor presenting a smoking gun. I found this in her room an hour ago. I didn't want to believe it. I thought we could get her help before it was too late. He unfolded the paper. His voice broke a masterclass in acting. It's a suicide note. He sobbed to the room. I can't live in Ashley's shadow anymore. If I go, she goes with me. That's what she wrote. She tried to kill herself and take her sister down with her. The guests gasped. I looked at the paper. It was my stationery. It was a passable forgery of my handwriting. They had this plan down to the prop. They expected me to be the one on the floor, foaming at the mouth, with this note tucked into my pocket as the explanation for my tragic, jealous breakdown. Susan lunged at me then. To the audience, it looked like a grieving mother collapsing into her troubled child. She threw her arms around me, sobbing loudly into my shoulder. Oh, Eudora, why? Why couldn't you just let us love you? But her body was rigid as stone. Her fingernails dug into the soft flesh of my upper arm, piercing the skin. She pulled me close, her tears wet against my neck. And then she whispered, her voice a razor-wire hiss right in my ear. You stupid, ungrateful bitch. She breathed. Vance isn't here to save Ashley. He's here to sedate you. By the time you wake up, you'll be in a padded room in the Adirondacks, and Ashley will be the tragic survivor. You're going away forever. She pulled back, looking at me with tear-filled eyes, waiting for me to break. Waiting for the panic. Waiting for the realization that I was trapped in their narrative. The crazy daughter who finally snapped. But I didn't break. I looked at the blood welling up where her nails had cut me. I looked at my father, red-faced and panting, holding the fake note like a shield. They were desperate. They were improvising. And they were sloppy. That's a nice story, Mom, I said. Loud enough for the senator's wife to hear. But there's just one problem with the script. I peeled my mother's fingers off my arm one by one. It wasn't a struggle. It was like removing a tick. She stumbled back, her grieving mother act faltering as I stepped out of her reach. I didn't shout. I didn't argue about the handwriting on the note or the insanity of her accusations. I simply turned my back on them and walked to the center of the room. The main banquet table was dominated by an explosion of white hydrangeas and orchids, a floral arrangement that cost more than my first car. I reached into the center of the bouquet, pushed aside the stems, and pulled out my phone. It was propped up on a small stand, the camera lens peering out through the leaves like a sniper. The screen was glowing. You're right, Dad, I said, holding the phone up so the screen faced the room. This is a tragedy. And 24,000 people are watching it happen live. The silence that fell over the room was heavier than before. It was the silence of a vacuum. Robert stared at the phone. He squinted, trying to process what he was seeing. The little red live icon was pulsing in the corner. The comment stream was a blur of speed emojis of skulls, shock, and rage scrolling so fast they were unreadable. I started the stream 20 minutes ago, I announced, my voice calm, addressing the room, but looking at the lens. They saw the toast. They saw Mom slip the powder. They saw the switch. And they definitely heard you talk about that suicide note you planted. Turn it off. Robert lunged for me, but he stopped short when he saw the guest list. These were senators, CEOs, socialites. They were all pulling out their own phones now. Checking the feed. Checking the comments. The notification had gone out. The algorithm had picked it up. We weren't just at a dinner party anymore. We were trending. The double doors burst open. Dr. Vance rushed in, flanked by two burly men carrying a stretcher. He looked like salvation to my parents. A man ready to sedate a hysterical daughter and intubate a dying one. Get her! Robert screamed, pointing at me. She's dangerous! Sedate her! Vance took one step toward me, reaching into his bag for a syringe. I didn't move. I just tilted the phone screen toward him. Dr. Frederick Vance, I said, reading the name off his badge for the microphone. License number 49221. Say hello to the internet. If you touch me, or if you move my sister before the police arrive, you become an accessory to attempted murder on a live stream. Vance froze. He looked at the phone. He looked at the rolling comments. He looked at my father, who was purple with rage. And then he looked back at his career. He was a fixer. A mercenary. Mercenaries don't fight battles they've already lost. He slowly put his hands up, stepping back from Ashley's convulsing body. I'm just here to render aid, he stammered, backing toward the door. I didn't know anything about this. Coward! Susan shrieked at him, abandoning the weeping act entirely. I brought the phone closer to my face, looking directly into the camera. Did you hear that? I asked the invisible audience. That's the sound of a narrative dying. I looked at my parents. They were paralyzed. The script had been flipped. They thought they were the directors of this play, but they were just actors who had forgotten their lines. They couldn't gaslight the entire internet. But Robert wasn't done. I saw it in his eyes, the shift from panic to something darker. Something primal. The cornered rat wasn't looking for an exit anymore. He was looking for a throat. Robert didn't crumble. He didn't drop to his knees and beg for forgiveness. He did something far more dangerous. He stopped breathing. His face, previously flushed with panic, went terrifyingly blank. The chaotic noise of the room seemed to slide off him. Psychologists call this the extinction burst. It's what happens when a narcissist realizes they can no longer control you through manipulation. When the old buttons stop working, they don't surrender. They escalate to total annihilation. They would rather burn the entire kingdom to ash than let you sit on the throne. I had taken away his narrative, so now he was going to take away my freedom. "Lock the gates," he said. His voice wasn't a scream anymore. It was a low, guttural command. 2 private security guards, massive men in dark suits who had been perimeter ornaments until this moment, stepped forward from the shadows. They tapped their earpieces. I heard the distant, hydraulic thud of the main iron gate sealing the peninsula. The ocean was behind me. The gates were locked. I was trapped in a cage of gold and glass. "Dad?" I said, lowering the phone slightly. "The police are already en route." "There are no police coming for me," Robert sneered. He reached into his tuxedo jacket again. He didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a document. A single, folded sheet of heavy legal bond paper. He held it up to the guests, then to my camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this spectacle. My daughter is unwell. We've known for months. This video? It's a deep fake. A filter. Technology can do anything these days." "It's live!" I shouted. But he talked over me, his voice booming with the authority of a man who owned senators. "She has a history of psychotic breaks," he lied, smooth as silk. "She believes family members are trying to kill her. It's a tragedy, but we were prepared." He snapped his fingers. The guards moved closer, flanking me. "This is an involuntary committal order," Robert announced, flashing the document. "Signed by Judge Holloway an hour ago. Section 939. Immediate transport to the Blackwood Psychiatric Facility for emergency evaluation." The blood drained from my face. Judge Holloway was his golf partner. Blackwood was a warehouse for the inconvenient relatives of the ultra-rich, a place where they sedated you until you didn't know your own name, and certainly couldn't testify in court. It wasn't a hospital. It was a black site with a medical license. "Grab her," Robert ordered. "You can't do this." I backed up, hitting the edge of the table. "The whole world is watching." "Let them watch," Robert hissed, stepping into my personal space. The smell of his expensive cologne was suffocating. "By the time the police sort this out, you'll be heavily medicated in a padded room upstate. I'll tell the press it was an intervention gone wrong. I'll cry on TV. And you? You will never speak again." One of the guards grabbed my arm. His grip was like a vice. I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the camera lens staring up at the ceiling, capturing only the chaotic movement of feet. "Let me go!" I struggled, but the second guard grabbed my other arm. I was pinned. I looked at the guests. They were paralyzed, confused by the legal document, terrified of Robert's power. Nobody moved to help. This was the false defeat. I had the truth. I had the evidence. I had the audience, and none of it mattered against the brute force of a man who owned the law. Robert smiled, picking up my fallen phone. He looked into the camera one last time. "Show's over," he said, and his thumb hovered over the end stream button. The silence that followed my father's command to end the stream was broken by a sound no one expected. I laughed. It wasn't a hysterical, broken laugh. It was a cold, sharp sound that bounced off the vaulted ceilings. Robert froze, his thumb hovering millimeters from the screen. He looked at me like I was the one who had lost my mind. "You think this is funny?" he spat. "You're going to rot in a cell, Eudora." I didn't fight the guards. I just smiled. "You might want to check who signs your paychecks now," I said. "Because as of 5 minutes ago, it isn't him." One guard hesitated. "Front pocket of my bag. Blue folder. Read it." Robert panicked. "She's lying." But doubt was already spreading. The guard pulled out the folder and opened it. New York County Clerk's seal. "My grandmother's deed. She left the house to me," I told my father. "She knew you'd try to steal it. It's a life estate," he shouted. "Read Section 4, I said. The guard read the clause aloud. "Any felony committed on the property ends the life estate immediately." Silence. My mother turned white. "You just poisoned someone on camera," I said. and tried to kidnap me. Congratulations, you evicted yourself. I took my phone back and faced the guards. This man and this woman are trespassing. Remove them. The guards grabbed my parents. Robert fought, yelling his own name like it meant something. Phones came up everywhere, every guest recording the fall of a dynasty. I don't have a family, I called after them. I have defendants. They hit the steps just as state troopers arrived. Minutes later, Robert was face down on a patrol car, cuffed and screaming. Inside, Ashley stirred on the floor, alive but sick. You knew, she whispered. I did, I said. And you drank it anyway. That's what entitlement does. The live stream ended. The evidence went everywhere, millions of eyes, no spin left. Attempted murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, embezzlement charges stacked like bricks. I visited the mansion once more. It felt rotten. I sold it, dumped every cent into a fund for victims of financial abuse, and walked away. Now I live small, cheaply furnished, and safe. No poison in the glass. No locks on the bedroom door. Sometimes winning isn't keeping the castle. It's burning it down so they can never lock you in again.